Hi everyone, welcome to today's session. My name is Anka. I will be your host for today. Let me know in the chat while you're still joining if you're excited to get started with the social media challenge. And feel free to tell me where you're joining in from as well. I am very excited. We are doing this for quite a while now. I believe every few months we keep doing a challenge, and every time I see better and better results from our audience. So I'm excited to see what you guys are going to be coming up with. So I'm going to share my screen just to make sure that everything is perfect and ready to start. Can you see my screen? Is everything okay? Yes, perfect. Awesome. So, once again, today we are talking about social media. We're taking a challenge that's going to be more of a fast-paced, practical reset for your social media strategy. We're about at the halfway mark of the year. So, the first half of 2025 has passed. If you've done a great job until now, that's awesome. It's time to look at what you've done, what worked, and move it forward. And if you haven't done a great work well, it's time to reset. It's time to work on what will work in the next 6 months up until the end of of this year. So in the following 2 hours, we'll talk about the core elements that you have. You'll see them on screen as well. And by the way, if you see me looking from side to side, it's because I have 2 screens so that I can also see the chat there. But yeah, in the following 2 hours, we'll talk about the core elements of any good social media strategy, and those are goal setting, content pillars, planning your content, creating your content, engagement, analytics, all of that so that you can build a robust plan for your social media. One more thing though, if you're joining us live throughout this entire session, you are automatically registered to win one of 3 awesome prizes, 2 of which are a 1-year subscription of a SocialBee plan, and the other one being a lifetime account on Ace Meetings, which is our calendar booking solution. So stick with us live until the end of today's session, and hopefully you will win one of these 3 awesome prizes. So you are going to be automatically registered to win if you're live in today's session. But if not, you still get a lot of value from today's session as well. So now that everyone's joined, let me properly introduce myself. My name is Anka. I'm a social media strategist here at SocialBee. And over the past 10 years, I've been guiding businesses like yours to make the most out of their online presence. In today's webinar, I wanted to go over the social media strategy and help you get a head start with your social media. But before we dive in, let me also go over some house rules. First of all, you might have already met my colleague Andrea, who is joining us in the chat here. Andrea, feel free to say hi. She's here to help with any questions that you might have that are maybe not visible to me, or anything that's very quick and easy to assist with. But by the way, speaking of questions, there will be a Q&A session throughout this webinar. So actually at the end, we'll have around 15 to 20 minutes worth of questions. So feel free to add any questions that you might have in the Q&A box that you should be able to see somewhere along the Zoom bar at the bottom there. Another cool thing that we're going to do in today's session is that we will have some practical exercises that we're going to launch so that you can actually put into practice what we preach over here. Of course, we are not going to take time and work on those exercises today because the time is super short, but you will have to do the exercises. And even if you maybe want feedback on them, you can email me and I'll provide you with feedback on them. And finally, this session is recorded, so don't worry if you don't have the time to stay for the entire length of it. You will get the recording, or even if you just want to rewatch it, you will get a recording of it at the end. So without further ado, let's start with the social media challenge. Today, we're starting with the goal setting and planning part, which in my opinion is one of the more important aspects of strategizing itself. And some key points that we'll go over here include answering the question of why goals matter, how you can set your goals, and what SMART goals are. And I'll also try to give you some examples of specific goals that you can include in your objectives and strategy in terms of platforms, in terms of metrics, in terms of timeframes and all of that, so that you can make the most out of this. That being said, keep in mind that this challenge is not about perfection. So if you're a perfectionist like me, put your perfectionism aside and do the actual work to gain momentum and move forward with your social media goals. So let's talk about why goals matter first. I want to ask you, and feel free to actually answer this in the chat. Why are you on social media? What's your core goal there? So try to figure that out first. And once you have that, you can set the right objectives to plan your content strategically. So, for instance, if you want to gain more followers, gain more visibility, let's say you're a new business, you want people to learn about you. That's your main goal on social media, that people learn about you. That's a great goal to have, by the way, with social media. Sales, it's also a good goal to have, but with social media, that's a little more tricky. Anyway, whatever your goal is, once you know exactly why you are on social, you'll be able to measure your progress against benchmarks for that specific goal in your specific industry so that they are relevant to you. You are also going to be able to test different methods and adjust whenever you need to in order to make sure that you are reaching those goals. I see the comments in the chat on my second screen, and I'll address them, I promise. And then you're also able to create structure and consistency so that in ultimately you'll get better engagement. The reason I was giggling earlier is because my clients all say sales. Mine too. Go figure. So yeah, with social media, sales as a goal is a little bit too generic. It can happen, but it in my opinion at least, it shouldn't be your main goal for being on social media. Your sole presence on social media won't get you any more sales than you do otherwise. So there's a little trick to getting sales on social media, and it's not just being present there. Yes, new business, established expertise, attract clients. That's a great goal to have. Engage with supporters of our non-for-profit and provide real life stories of the humanitarian aid that we provide. That is amazing. So when these things are clear, then we can move further into establishing some actually SMART goals. In this case, SMART is an acronym and it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And actually, let's talk a little bit about this. So specific. First of all, your goals need to be very specific, easy to understand for anyone. So say no to general goals, say yes to something that's a little more detailed, like what channels you're using, who's in charge of reaching that goal, what steps you need to take, things like that. To make it measurable, you can add metrics that will make sure that you are measuring your progress. Because if you're just saying, I want to grow on social media, how will you know when you've actually grown? But if you say, I want to grow 1,000 followers on social media, then when you have 500 followers in growth, you'll know that you're halfway towards your goal. You can make your goals achievable in order to pump you up for reaching those goals. If you make your goals unrealistic, like attaining 10,000 followers in the first month of you ever being on social, you're going to set yourself up for failure because literally not even 1% of anyone on social media grows that fast. So make your goals achievable. Make sure you jump through the hoops of maybe first gaining your first 10 followers, then your first 100 followers, 1,000 followers, and only then get to towards the 10K goal of followers. You also have to make sure that your goals are relevant. So followers might be a great goal to have for someone who's trying to raise brand awareness, who's trying to gain a community online, but it's not going to get you sales on its own, as I said before. So make it relevant by making sure that this goal helps solve a problem that you have online. Or that your business is facing. So if your problem is that your audience doesn't know about you, then yes, followers is a great goal. If your problem is that you don't have sales, then followers is not your main problem there for that specific goal. And then finally, make it time bound. Set a deadline for it, plain and simple, making sure that you have that deadline in order to actually start working towards it and have a little bit of a time crunch, which usually helps with making goals a little better. So here's a few examples of goals that you could do. I had one for Pinterest, one for YouTube, just to kind of give you examples. I'm not going to go over them too much in too much detail because there's a lot to cover in today's session. But just so that you get an idea, you have two examples of how you can make your goals specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Now, once we have those goals, we're moving into the second aspect of our challenge today. And there's actually about 6 pieces of information of segments that I'm going to do in today's challenge. So the second one is about content pillars and topic clarity. You'll see that once you have your goals, you are able to get a better understanding of the types of content that you need to create in order to reach those goals. Those types of content essentially are going to be your content pillars and your topics, and you're going to be able to choose ones that really help work towards those goals that you have set for yourself. So in this segment, we're going to talk about the difference between what content pillars are versus what topics are, because they are different. Your content pillars and topics can be different. I'm going to suggest three pillars that you can get started with and build from there. And we're going to talk about a few examples of how you can do that. But first, let's understand how you can develop your content pillars and topics. So as a definition to start with, content pillars, what exactly are they? They are your main themes of content. These will guide your content through the strategy, through the year, through the entire length of time that you're working on content. These can be content that's promotional, promoting your business. It can be content that's educational, informational even. These two kind of tend to educate your audience or inform them about new developments in your industry and in your business. You can have entertainment as a pillar, which is where your audience stays entertained and a little bit engaging with your content. You can even have engaging as their own pillar. There's a whole bunch more that you can do. But my personal recommendation, and the reason why you're seeing this on screen, is I want you to pick 3, not more than 3. And if you really can't settle on 3, let's go with 5, but only if you've already had the 3 done before. So I would say start with 3 pillars, and those 3 pillars are going to be educational content, entertaining content, and promotional content. And the reason why I'm telling you these pillars in this specific order is that first, your audience needs to have value. and value you can give through education as well as entertainment. Depending on the social media, depending on the demographic, depending on the industry that you're on, you might want to lean more towards education or towards entertainment, but you should have a mix of these two within your content mix. And then the third one obviously should be promotional, because you need to have a way to promote your business further, just to get your audience familiar with what you do, so that when they actually have that need, they can come directly to you because you are top of mind. So now that we have our three pillars, educational, entertaining, and promotional, we're going to go into topics. Now, what exactly are topics and how are they different from pillars? Well, topics are, first of all, very industry specific. So anyone can make promotional content, educational content, and entertaining content, right? Regardless of industry. They're generic. But when it comes to topics, these are industry specific subjects that are very much relevant to your particular audience. And you'll cycle through them, as you see in this graph over here, through the different pillars and intertwine them together. You will address your audience's interests and you will address your audience's challenges with these topics. And as I said earlier, they can be applied to all pillars. In SocialBee, if you are already using SocialBee, by the way, we use content categories, and you can use them either as pillars or as topics, however you prefer and whatever works best for you. I personally recommend using them as categories. Yeah, of course, they're categories. No, as pillars, because I find it easier to work with 3 different pillars and then include topics into these pillars as needed. So let's take an example, right? Let's talk SocialBee, right? One of our audience's main problems is consistent posting. So people struggle with consistent posting, and feel free to raise your hand in the chat if that's you as well, because it sure is me. Even with SocialBee, I sometimes struggle with being consistent with my posting. But anyway, so let's talk about consistent posting and how we can apply this one topic to all 3 content pillars that we have. So let's talk educational content first. As a social media scheduler, which is what SocialBee is, the first thing that we're going to do to try to solve this issue is to educate our audience on how they can do consistent posting. And that is by sharing insights on how social media algorithms work, how they reward consistency, how we can provide tips on how they can maintain a schedule, what's the easiest way to do that, what tools they can use in order to make it as efficient as possible and as simple as possible for them to become consistent in their posting. Moving on into the second pillar, which is entertaining content, we can go the relatable route. And that means using maybe a meme or something like that to highlight the difference between inconsistent posting and consistent posting, and how consistent posting is better, but it's still relatable because, well, everyone is inconsistent one time or another. And then the third pillar, the promotional pillar, this is where you showcase your product. In the case of SocialBee, this is where we show how SocialBee can help you with staying consistent through the content categories, through the AI features, through the consistent scheduling, through all the tools and features that you have at your disposal within SocialBee to make that entire thing happen. Before you get too excited and too hyped, I want you to remember 2 things. Start simple, publishing maybe 1 post per week for each pillar. That will give you around 3 posts per week, which is a bare minimum bone structure for your content strategy. And then if you feel like you can do more, you can definitely add as you go, but start with 1 post per week for each pillar. And then you can alternate different topics to maintain variety. You don't have to make it a weekly thing to take the same topic and apply it to every pillar. You can do mix and matches between different topics and different pillars at different times. So it doesn't have to be a themed week unless you actually want to do that. Whew, that's a mouthful. Okay, so time for our first challenge of the day. And the first thing that I want you to do is to take 15 minutes after our session today and choose one social media channel that you're going to focus on. This will be your main channel, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, depending on where your audience is. Pick one and focus on that. Set a smart goal for that channel and then develop a list of content pillars and topics that you're going to go through in order to work on your social media strategy. So with this, if you need help, if you need feedback, you can always email me after the session is done and share your work with this, and we can talk about it without any issue. Feel free to also take a screenshot of this. I'm going to sip some water in the meantime. And then we're going to move into the next phase, which is planning and post timing. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is the next step is to think about how you're going to plan your content. You're going to think about the structure that you're going to follow every single time that you're creating and scheduling content. In this topic, in this segment, we're going to talk about using AI for content creation, for posting frequency, prompts that you can use to generate content. SMART, what does SMART stand for? SMART stands for specific, measurable, wait, let me take it back. Yeah, there we go. Andrea helped. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Okay, so let's go with posting and planning, and starting off with post planning and best practices. Let's just call them that, best practices. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is determine the best practices for your posting times and frequency of posting. Feel free to take a screenshot, as I said, of this, but you will get the slide deck as well in the email. So we're going to talk about posting frequency first. Each platform has their own behavior when it comes to how the audience consumes the content, and it can be quick or longer to digest. And depending on that, you're going to see platforms that will take a lot of content in a day and platforms that take less content in a week, for instance. So just to give you an example, Facebook, it recommends having 1 or 2 posts per day, but Instagram has 3 to 5 posts every week. So with Instagram, you don't want to overdo it with content. You can also share, by the way, around 2 stories per day. Any more than that, and you're gonna see a drop in your views for the stories. When it comes to other platforms like X or LinkedIn, you can post 1 to 2 times a day on LinkedIn or 2 to 3 times a day on X. And then other platforms that I thought would be interesting to include are Pinterest with minimum 1 pin per week, YouTube with a minimum of 1 video per week, and TikTok with 3 to 5 posts per week, just like Instagram. Now, if you are wondering about other platforms, Threads, for instance, performs better in the morning. It does act a little bit like X, but also it's a little more visual than X. On the other hand, Blue Sky's engagement patterns are very, very similar to early Twitter. So midday is best for Blue Sky. With Google Business, you don't really have a time to post, but you want to work on posting because of local SEO. So this is awesome for offers, for events, for getting reviews, all of that. And yeah, essentially all of these platforms thrive on consistency, which is why it is important to do all of this. I see a lot of questions in the chat. Just to make sure that I'm not missing any of them, please add them in the Q&A box, and I will answer them at the end of the session. Okay, so let's talk about AI now. Let's talk about how you can use AI to make your content planning smarter and a little bit faster without losing that personal touch that is so important nowadays. So yes, essentially, yes, you will get the recording. Sorry, I got distracted there for a second. Um, but yes, you will get the recording of today's call. Anyway, so the biggest mistake that I see people doing is just overusing AI or not really putting their personal spin on the AI output. Either that or they're asking the wrong questions. But with the right prompts, you can actually become your own content planning assistant, essentially. So how do you use AI? Essentially, to plan your content, you can use prompts like the ones that you have on screen to define the content that is right for your particular audience. So these two are generate a list of content types that people find popular among blah, 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 target audience. You can generate topic ideas for Instagram in the blah, blah, blah industry with the specific subject interests and goals and all of that. So these are great to have as a starting point to the goal setting agenda and how you can actually start working on planning those content ideas and topics based on the goals that you set earlier. So once you have those ideas, the next step is to actually work on creating your content. And the way you're going to do that is by making sure that you batch and reuse content, that you use the AI tools at your disposal to speed things up and make things easier for yourself, and by knowing the anatomy of a post. At some point in my life, I wanted to become a doctor. So I learned a lot of anatomy, and now I'm talking about anatomy, but in a different way. I'm talking about the anatomy of a post. We'll get there in just a second. But first, I wanted to share with you a few rules that we have in place to guide you through creating content in a quick and efficient manner. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is to plan before you create. You can use content pillars and topics to guide you through the content that you want to create and list out the topics in advance, like we did with the AI prompt earlier, in order to know what you want to post about at any given time. So with that in mind, you want to also batch similar tasks together. So in this case, you want to write maybe captions together in one sitting or design the graphics in a different sitting, film multiple videos, and then have a different session for editing those videos, scheduling the content in bulk by using a content calendar solution like SocialBee. These are all things that you can batch up so that it brings you into the right mindset and it allows you to create the content a lot faster, a lot easier than it would to just go post by post every single time. Another thing that you can do is to repurpose and reuse your existing content. The reason why I say this, and the one question I get always when I say this, is, but won't it become repetitive? Not when you do it right. So you can repurpose content that you have. You can turn a blog post into social media posts. And if your blog is a listicle, it's 10 reasons why SocialBee is super awesome. You can create 10 different social media posts listing those 10 reasons why SocialBee is super awesome. I would love to see that content though. But essentially, yes, you can have a longer piece of content, whether it's a blog post, a video, a webinar like this one, where we can extract different nuggets of information and share them into shorter form, easy to digest content. So social media, right? You can also use structures like reformatting your content across different platforms. And you'll see here in the slides that I have on screen that you'll see at the bottom that I have a tweet that SocialBee did at some point in the past that really got quite good engagement. And at some point, we thought, well, it would be nice to just leverage that engagement and see if it works on other platforms. So we converted that specific tweet into an Instagram visual and added it to Instagram. And it performed as well on Instagram. It did really well, which really showed us that our audience is aligned across the different platforms. So it's a great way to kind of test to see if you have the same audience, if your audiences have any differences between these platforms. Where is your actual audience even? Because you might think it's on Twitter and it's not, or vice versa. So it's a great way to save yourself some time by reusing the content, as well as making sure that you are testing a few things. So finally, let's get to the anatomy of a post. As I promised, we are going to talk about the different elements that you need to keep in mind when creating your social media posts. And these can be different from platform to platform. So whether you are going post by post or you are working on specific elements, like I suggested, you do need to have them in mind before you create them. So let's talk about the image on the left of your screen. That is the one of an Instagram post. And it typically has a visual, a caption, hashtags, call to action, things like that. So a visual, in this day and age, it could be either a single image, it could be a carousel, it could be a mixed carousel that has both videos and images in there. It could be a reel. That's your visual. You need to think and plan ahead whether you need to have a reel, whether you need to have a single image, a carousel, if your carousel tells a story, or it's just a photo dump. You need to think of these in advance. Once you have that pinned down, you can start working on designing those images or filming that video for your reel or editing it with existing footage and things like that. Another element in here is the caption, which is very important, and it actually has subcategories. So the caption is the one that includes your call to action, your CTA, and hashtags. Your caption is also the area that your audience goes to find out more about the thing that caught their attention, which is the visual. So if in your visual you just have an element that kind of introduces the story, like for instance, we have here new features for Facebook stories. In the caption, we're going to go ahead and tell you more about what those new features are. We're also going to include a call to action to tell the audience what we want them to do with that post. In this specific example, I said, ready to stay top of mind? Start scheduling your Facebook stories through SocialBee, because this was a post where I was announcing that SocialBee can now schedule Facebook stories. So the call to action is to do that, try that new feature within the SocialBee app. And then you also have hashtags, which some people say are not as relevant in today's day and age, especially on Instagram. But my opinion is that hashtags are still relevant, not to the point of having 30 in your caption, but to the point of training the algorithm for the keywords or the topics that your content is about. So think of hashtags more in terms of keywords, tags, rather than discoverable elements in your content, because as discoverable, as far as reach goes, they do not work as well anymore. You might also have other elements for Instagram, like trending audio. This can also apply to other platforms like TikTok. So if you're planning on sharing the same content to multiple platforms, you want to think about whether you're using the same audio, whether you're using different audios. You do need to have these very thought through. You might also want to think about location pins, stickers, effects, filters, anything that that platform offers, especially if it is platform specific. On the image on the right, we have a Pinterest pin, and the anatomy of a Pinterest pin is a little bit different. You still have the visual. In this case, you will have to focus on having it a little more vertical than you would for Instagram, maybe a little bit differently built in order to become a little more visual on Pinterest. You would still have the call to action in the caption. So the caption stays, but you get to add a board, you get to add a title, a source link. So there's a few extra elements that, for instance, Instagram does not have. So you need to think about all of these in order to create your content efficiently. Okay, so one question on the hashtags that I saw quick and I want to answer it. What would you recommend as the minimum or maximum amount of hashtags? In terms of Instagram, I would say add 3 to 5 hashtags, not more. Think of them in terms of topics. Or maybe location if you want to focus on a specific location. So for instance, if you're doing an event, you might want to say London events as your hashtag, as one of your hashtags, and then another one for your industry. I heard hashtags are dead. Well, they kind of are when you think of them in terms of reach, but when you think of them as SEO to train your algorithm, they are not. So I would still suggest using hashtags, not as many, not for reach. They won't help with discoverability, but they will help with guiding the algorithm to showing your post to those people who actually need to see it and who are interested in it. Okay, let's move further because we have a lot of ground to cover still. Okay, so we have all of these elements. Now, how do we speed up the content? By using AI, of course. We can use the AI for a lot of things nowadays, and I'm sure you've already done that. And I'm not giving you anything new here, but you can actually brainstorm content ideas, you can generate content, you can generate the entire post with AI, you can generate your entire strategy with AI, you can rewrite existing content, improve it, you can use it to generate scripts or video ideas or concepts for your art, for your visuals. All of that you can do with AI, but the thing is, you have to do it right. The less time you spend creating content, the more time you'll have to focus on other aspects of your business. That is true, but it is imperative that you do it the right way and that you still add a little bit of a human touch and personal insight to your content. Especially when working with AI, you want to use it as your assistant, not have it replace you in terms of doing this work. So how do we do that? Let's talk specifics, right? I'm talking about brainstorming ideas first. This is a prompt that you can use to generate content ideas. The prompt is easy. You would have to replace a few elements there, but in practice, here's what I said to get the example that you see on the right. I said generate LinkedIn topic ideas for our social media marketer audience interested in learning about social media best practices, creating content more efficiently and growing their account. I said that I'd like to include a mix of informative and educational content with memes and relatable posts as well. And these are a few examples that it gave me. And as you can see here, they're quite good as far as topics go and ideas that you can then develop into a full-blown post. Once you do that, you can actually use it to generate your content a lot easier. Again, here I have a few prompts that you can use if you're using statistics that you've gained in, I don't know, a different way. You can just include the statistic in there and create insightful posts based on the following statistic. That is one prompt that you can use, or to just write the caption for a specific platform, for a specific image, for the following type of content. So you should include the following information that's important, that's relevant. You should make it funny. You should make it relatable. You can make it in English. You can make it in Spanish. You can make it however you want to. It's important to specify all of that though. And then you can also use it to rewrite or improve existing content, as I said. So in this case, you'll see two prompts that you can use to repurpose your content, your existing content. So you have create 3 new and different variations of the post that maybe performed well, so that you can use it kind of like a formula to continue working on that. And then you have the second prompt here, which is write 3 different variations on the following post, maybe about the specific topic, and then customize them differently for Facebook, for Instagram, for Threads, for all of these other platforms that you're using, and then take into consideration the best practices and character limitations of each platform. So this already gives you a good structure, taking into account the anatomy, specific ingredients for your post, depending on the platforms that you have. And okay, so and I wanted to say that yes, you will be able to get the 3 variations, and this is actually something that's super cool and easy to do in SocialBee with the AI post generator that you have within your SocialBee account. So it's super easy to do that as well within SocialBee. The next topic was to write scripts for the videos that will then become your reels, your TikToks, everything. In this case, we kind of used the prompt that you see on screen to say generate a script for maybe an Instagram reel about navigating social media analytics. And in this case, the script should be engaging and informative. So it definitely did that very easily, and we were able to make a few small tweaks to make it sound more like us, and then create the content from there. Now, a few things with AI. I'm sure you've noticed that it is very much noticeable when you are just seeing generic AI content. And there's a few common indicators that everyone's talking about these days, like the M dash is actually one that everyone's been talking about lately. Emojis, the constant use of emojis is another one. The very the overuse of generic phrases, the way I phrased it in the slides here, having the same sentence structure over and over again, because in real life, in your natural speech, you will have longer sentences that maybe don't make that much sense. You will have shorter sentences. You'll have them mixed and matched together to make sure that you convey the idea that you're trying to share, right? But with the AI, it kind of keeps the same structure for each sentence. It kind of keeps the same length for each sentence. And it does have a little bit of lack in emotional nuance. So that's where the human touch comes into play. So you can make your AI sound, or your AI text, your AI content sound more human by adding your personal anecdotes or specific details, even the statistics that I mentioned earlier. You can vary the sentence lengths, you can vary the word choices, you can avoid using overly used no, wait, let me rephrase that. You can avoid leveraging magical words that are very commonly used with AI. Leverage, magic, all of these really are very overused with AI. And then you can also do what, yeah, streamline as well, very much so. And then you can also do what I just did there and infuse a little bit of humor into your text so that you can have a little bit of that personal human touch there, or cultural references wherever they apply, or things like that, to kind of make the content more your own, and more personal and relatable to your audience. That's essentially it. You want to make it relatable to your audience. I'm so cheesy. The AI puns absolutely sound like something I would have written. Yeah, honestly, Brenda, I feel personally attacked that everyone thinks that whenever I write something using the M dash, they think it's AI. So honestly, same. But also, I try to be very mindful about how I'm using it. And even when I am using it, it is a little bit um, different than what AI would do, right? Everyone feels attacked by something. But the truth is, AI is being trained by us. So essentially, we made it cheesy. We made it cheesy. There, I said it. Um, let's move into the second practical exercise that I have for you. The first one was to select a platform to focus on, and then add SMART goals and content pillars, right? Now, with this one, once we've talked about content creation, we are actually working on the content. So use one of the prompts in the slides that we've talked about earlier, and come up with around 5, I would say, content ideas focused around one of your themes. And then with that, we're going to be able to work on actual content and make it a lot easier and fun for ourselves. So once again, if you want to share that with me, you can always do that. You can reach me at anka@socialbee.com, and you'll be able to share these exercises and the results that you're getting, and ask for any feedback on them. Um, right. Okay. So one more thing. We're gonna need to also analyze the content, and we're going to need to engage with our audience, because social media ultimately is, guess what? Social. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at analytics. We're gonna see what analytics actually matter for your goals. We're gonna see fast responses that you can get to your content so that you raise that engagement. We're gonna try our best to watch mentions, to watch the comments, to run simple tips and tricks to boost that reach and boost that engagement. And we're going to talk about some examples of how you can do that as well. But first, are you checking analytics? Be honest with me. How often, and are you checking analytics, and if so, how often are you doing it? I want you to tell me in the chat, how often are you checking for analytics? Weekly. Okay, weekly. Okay, okay. Too much. Not really. Just watching reach. Oh, wow. Those are two extremes there. Going from not really to too much. Weekly and monthly. That is great. Weekly and monthly. When I remember, that is the most honest answer. Every 5 years. Okay, let's. I'm not sure I understand the analytics. You will by the end of today's session. I promise you this. Okay, just a moment. I am panicking. I will mute myself for a second. My laptop is running out of battery and I forgot to plug it in. So give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Whew. Crisis averted. Sorry about that. I really forgot to plug in my laptop. Ah, whew, well, This is how you know it's live. It can't be live if nothing happens. Anyway, let's talk about analytics. So, should you be checking analytics? And if so, how often should you? Should you really make it weekly, or should you make it 5 years, every 5 years or so? So you should definitely check analytics if you want to make informed decisions about your social media and adjust your strategy as needed. If you want to or need to explain the use of time and resources, or if you just want to track your progress towards those measurable goals that we set in the beginning. So yes, you should track analytics. How often? It does depend on your goal. It does depend on the time boundness, the deadline that you have for your goal. So it really does depend on that. But I would say on average, the best way to look at your analytics and have something is to look at them on a monthly basis. So maybe in the beginning of the month or in the end of the month, set some time aside to look at your analytics and really dig into what's going on in there, what's working, what's not working, and have a way to use those analytics as a way to improve your strategy further. Because yes, social media strategy is not something that you do once and follow and will actually guarantee you success. It is, in fact, a series of trial and error and adjustments to what works and what doesn't in your current plan of content. That's what social media strategy actually is. So let's talk metrics. By the way, if you don't know me yet, analytics is definitely my favorite part of social media strategy. I say it in every single webinar that I do. Analytics is, I'm a data girly. I'm a data girly. It is what it is. Andrea here is very much a content girly. I'm a data girly. So I really love the analytics. I really love the metrics. And we're gonna go ahead and walk through the important metrics. And there's actually around 5 categories, 5 types of metrics that you can look at. Engagement metrics, awareness, brand health, referral, and follower growth, audience size, all of that. So we're going to go ahead and talk about all of these. But what I want you to do is to think about and really think about the metrics that matter towards your goals. You don't need to track everything, just anything that matters towards your goals. So if your goal is, going back to the beginning, getting 10,000 followers, definitely look at follower growth, but also look at reach. Because if your audience is not seeing your content, you can't grow. On the other hand, if your goal is engagement, then your follower count might not be as relevant as your likes, your saves, your shares. All of that will matter more than the follower growth does. It does to a certain extent, but we'll talk about it in a little bit. So one thing that I want you to do here is, even though you are looking at analytics on a monthly basis, I want you to log them on a weekly basis. You can use a spreadsheet, you can use an app for that. SocialBee actually gives you amazing analytics in terms of diversity and everything that. So you can actually use SocialBee as a great source to just kind of get an overview of your entire analytics. And just because I see the question, when using SocialBee, is there a spot for analytics summary? Yes, I can give you a super 5-minute brief walkthrough of what SocialBee can do towards the end if we still have time. But if we don't have time, we do have free webinars walking you through the entire platform. I also use that time to answer questions about SocialBee, about social media. There's a monthly webinar on SocialBee alone, and I could be talking about that for hours. So I probably won't, because then we're just gonna end up being here until it's evening. But yes, you can get help if even if you get overwhelmed, like Jamie said, you can always get help by jumping on calls with us, by jumping on the webinars, by asking questions. You have my email, anka@socialbee.com. If it's a technical question, you can reach our success team, success@socialbee.com. You can book calls with our team, our sales team, our success team. All of those are amazing, and you can gain access to the insights that you need in order to help you move forward. Now back to analytics, let's talk a little bit about these metrics that you need to prioritize, starting with follower growth and audience size. A few of the metrics that matter here are the actual follower growth, so how your number of followers changes, but also your rate of growth. So that there's a point in your social media platform's life when you'll see that some people will actually unfollow you. And that is perfectly normal. There's a life cycle of every follower, and it's healthy for you to actually lose some followers that would otherwise not identify with your content, not interact with your content, and just pull you down. So it's best to let them go. That's great. But look at your overall growth rate and see whether you have more followers coming in than leaving or otherwise. Because if it's otherwise, then we have a little problem there. You're also going to want to maintain a little grasp on your audience size. In terms of, let's say what's next, let's say awareness metrics. You want to look at things that are measuring your brand awareness and your general awareness in terms of what your audience is aware of for you. And those are impressions, they are views for videos, they are reach, profile views, things like this. You'll then have social media referral, right? So with this one, this specific one, you can look at it in Google Analytics and say things like how many people are coming from your Pinterest, which is very well known for bringing on traffic to your website. How many people are coming from your Instagram, which is very well known to not allow a lot of links and traffic. So you can kind of measure what platforms serve the purpose of bringing people to your website, if that is one of your goals, and then use that further. You can look at website visits. You can use referral traffic in general. All of that works really well. Then we have brand health. In this one, you want to work with the sentiment, the overall sentiment of your audience, depending on what you're using your social media for. I've seen companies use social media and X specifically for customer support, where the overall sentiment of the audience was a little bit heavy because they would only go there to complain about issues that they were having. So obviously, the entire purpose of that social media was a little bit heavier to digest if you just wanted to scroll over social media. But if you are looking for a solution, then all of a sudden that might become the it spot for you to get that answer that you were looking for. So assess the sentiment, but also look at its purpose. Look at brand mentions and see what people are talking about you when they are mentioning you actively so that you can see it. The ones where you get a notification and there's a link on your name, but also when they don't. So if you go to platforms like LinkedIn, you can type in your actual, you can actually type in the keyword, like your brand name. I would type in SocialBee and be able to look at posts where people are talking about SocialBee without tagging us. And when I reply to those posts, they are very much impressed by the fact that SocialBee is actually looking out for posts that talk about them, and that increases the sentiment, right? It makes me feel seen. It makes me feel happy as a potential customer of SocialBee that they are actually looking out and saw my content where I was maybe asking a question about how good SocialBee is, and SocialBee itself came to answer, hey, you know what? We can get on a call and I can actually show you whether this is the right tool for you or not. And then finally, we have engagement metrics. This is the last one of the bunch, and it's pretty much everything else that talks about how your audience interacts with your content. So we have post engagement, engagement rates, likes, comments, retweets, reactions, views, shares, video completion, keeping the retention rate for the video for the first 3 seconds, all of those and more you'll be able to work with in the engagement metrics. So with follower growth, let's start there. You'll be able to measure this, and I encourage you to actually measure this regardless of your goal, the follower growth specifically, because it can tell you a very comprehensive story about anything else that is happening on your social media. So even if your goal is not necessarily to grow an audience, you can actually use this metric to get a complete story of the health of your social media platform. So we will look at follower growth. As I said, we can measure the net new followers gained in a specific time frame to see if the account is stagnant or growing or not growing or decaying even. We can look at the growth rate to see how quickly our content or our followers are growing, how much is our content performing, how quickly we're actually growing or slowing down actually, and seeing how you can improve on that. And the audience size is something that can also tell you a lot of about the overall need for you to be present on social media, and how to do that. So as I said, if you are losing some followers, it's normal, don't worry about it. But if you're stagnant or declining over a specific time frame, it's time for a new strategy, and that's why we're here, so that we can analyze the content, we can see what's going on, we can see what's performing and what's not performing, and then we can adjust and grow. If you, on the other hand, are seeing a positive growth rate, then you're doing something right. Congratulations. Keep on doing what you're doing. Analyze your content during that period, see what worked, and do more of that. And just be mindful of the content that you have. With the engagement metrics, we're talking shares, retweets, comments, all of those that I've mentioned before and that you see on screen. The most important metric with engagement is the engagement rate. And the engagement rate is actually a sum of the number of interactions that you have on the post. And by the way, what counts as an interaction on a post could be a like, could be a share, could be a save, could be a comment. It could be the slides for your carousels. It could be a lot of that. So you will be able to have a sum of all interactions. And a little side note, one person can have multiple interactions as well. But yeah, so you would have the sum of all of those interactions, and then you would divide that by the total number of followers, which is why the follower rate is important, or by reach, depending on where you want to go, and then multiply it by 100 to get a percentage that would work. The rule of thumb here is that if you have low engagement, again, you need a new strategy, because engagement drives reach, reach drives growth, and all of that. So you kind of want to focus, if you have low engagement, you want to focus on a strategy and tactics that will allow you to increase engagement. In terms of the awareness metrics, you'll see how they will show you how much attention people are paying to your content and your business on social media. So in here, you'll see the impressions, the reach, the video views, all of those. And they can tell you a more comprehensive picture of everything that you need to know about your overall presence on social media. So in this case, if you have high reach and low impressions, you may notice that your content is reaching a broad audience, so it is getting distributed, but people are not engaging with your content. They're not revisiting your content, which might not be necessarily bad depending on your goals, but typically you want people to save that content, to return to it later, to share it with other people. You want people to engage and revisit this content in order to tell the algorithm that, hey, this is something that is worth showing to more people. If you have high reach and high impressions, you're doing great. Congratulations, you're winning in social media. It indicates that there's a positive growth of your entire platform, that you're capturing the attention of your audience. They are staying around for multiple views. They are sharing it. They are saving it. Everything is great. The other end of the spectrum is low reach and low impressions. And with this one, you essentially have limited visibility. This tells me that your content strategy is not working, that your posting times might be off, that your use of hashtags is off, that you are not gaining any traction with what you're currently doing. So it's time for a new strategy. If you are looking at both awareness metrics and engagement rate, if you have high reach and low engagement rates, people see your content, they don't interact with it. You might want to work on engagement. If you have low reach and low engagement, then you're going to want to work on reach. That's kind of how you're telling the story here. So high reach, low engagement, you're working on engagement because the people are seeing your content, they're not interacting with it. Low reach, low engagement, you're gonna wanna go for the reach first, because if they can't see it, they can't engage with it. Basically, that's the logic behind it. So what else can you do with these metrics? You can identify patterns when it comes to higher performing posts, looking at content format, at visuals, at themes that resonate well with your audience, and then use those as topics in your pillars. You can use it to optimize your content further. You can also evaluate the use of hashtags and whether it works or not for you particularly, depending on the platforms that you are on. Whether it increases visibility, you can monitor whether your awareness is increasing or decreasing or stagnant, whether you have any spikes or any drops that are very sudden that really stand out. There's a lot to look at here. Referral traffic, as I said, is great for improving your ROI. And you can use it best by using UTM parameters or UTM tracking. UTM stands for Universal Tracking Metrics, and it is a set of parameters that you add at the end of a link. And you can do that within SocialBee as well. But essentially, they will help Google Analytics kind of see it better and interpret it for you so that you can see whether your content is coming from Instagram, from Pinterest, from Twitter, from all of these places, and how much is coming from all of these places, basically. Brand health. With this one, you are actually going to see a more complete story about your channel's health, essentially. So you're going to look at audience sentiment, brand mentions. As I said before, you're going to want to track mentions that are tagged and untagged, if possible, to kind of keep that healthy channel glow up thing for your social media. But one key element here, you don't want to forget about platform-specific analytics. If there's anything that is specific to that platform, like retention rate on TikTok or returning viewers on YouTube, retweets on Twitter, things like that, you want to keep track of these. These are very specific and they can help with different objectives that you might have, but you need to keep track of them to kind of understand where they're going. We have more reach. We want more engagement. How do we do that? So essentially, I mentioned before that the engagement rate is important because engagement is not just a result that you're getting for good content. It is fuel for your content. If you're getting engagement, that means people are interacting and they're interested with your content. So in your content, sorry, they're interested in your content. So the algorithm is going to decide, well, if A is interested in this content and B is interested with this content, so that means all these other letters in the alphabet are also going to be interested in. Let me show it to them as well and push this content further. So that's what kind of engagement is. The more you engage with your audience, the more your audience learns that they want to interact more, basically. So as I said earlier, you want to have high engagement rates, you want to have positive engagement. These are very good signals that your channel is healthy and thriving, and everyone wants more of it. So how do we do that? In the following few slides, we're going to talk about a few tactics that you're going to use to generate more engagement, starting with responding to comments and messages as soon as possible. This is very important. It's vital to not let those first 24 hours pass without responding to comments, to mentions, to messages. Do not leave your audience unread for 5 days or weeks at a time, because that signals to them that you're either not interested in them or not present, which is not what we want. We want to be present on social media. We want the audience to feel like we're interested in what they have to say, right? So quick response is key here. It will signal to your audience that they are being acknowledged, that they matter, they are taken seriously. It helps with building a connection, a relation between you as a brand person and your audience as someone who is interested in help in solving a problem that they have, and it makes your brand more relatable, more approachable. It also helps with addressing any issues that you might have very promptly. Like I said, with the example of the brand that has a support channel on X. Of course, it's super easy for the audience to just go, hey, X, I want to do this and I don't know how. How do I do it? And then the audience, the team, the tech support team helps. If you don't have a lot of time to do this, however, because this is the number one complaint that I always hear when talking to people, I don't have time to do a lot of this. I don't have time to engage with my audience. I don't have time to reply. I can't be on social media all day to reply to every single comment. If you don't have time, implement the 10-10-10 rule. This will give you 15 minutes per day to help you reply to your own comments, to the comments under your own content, which is very important. Take 5 minutes to do that. Take 5 minutes to reply to DMs, to mentions that you have, and then take 5 minutes to comment on your ideal clients' posts, making sure that you reach outside of your own content, because that will gain you more visibility. So do that 15 minutes a day. You don't have to do more, 15 minutes a day. And if you really, really struggle to find the time to do that, there's always outsourcing. There's a way to do that super easy by using services like SocialBee, which is our sister brand, which can help do this for you so that you have the time to focus on the other aspects of your business that might be weighing more in your eyes than engaging with your audience on social media. But it is important to do this. You also are able to generate engagement by using tactics like questions, like polls, like giveaways. And speaking of giveaways, you're still with us, right? Because we are giving away 3 different prizes at the end of today's session. As I said earlier, 2 one-year SocialBee plans and 1 lifetime Ace Meetings account, which is our calendar booking solution. So as you can see, we are using tactics to help you engage with this webinar, which I'm hoping it is quite informational and educational in itself, and you're not just staying in for the price, but hoping that I'm actually giving you some awesome information here. So let's talk about these specific tactics. Before we do that, wait, no, actually, let's talk about these. I'm not going in the practical exercise yet. So running contests, running giveaways is very helpful because it helps share the news that you exist. So it's great for discoverability. You can actually have a low stakes giveaway where you just ask your audience to follow you. Hey, if you follow me, you're automatically registered to win. You'll be surprised how many new followers you get that way from people who are seeing your content but not actively following you. There's deeper contests, like if I don't know, if you have a photography shop, you can run a contest around the goofiest photo that you have ever taken and have people vote on it and have a whole engagement thing going on there and a jury and give a camera or something. So it is very easy to work with different ideas to generate engagement with contests and giveaways. Polls are also a great way to do that. You can use polls to get feedback from your audience, like, hey, are you finding this webinar useful? Yes or no? And by the way, thank you. I do see in the chat that you're saying that it is informational, that you are actually enjoying the content. So thank you so much for that. And then asking for questions, AMAs. What are AMAs? They are Ask Me Anything. That's what they're called. Essentially, it's the sticker that you see on Instagram stories, for instance, where you just add a text box where you say, Ask Me Anything. And then the AMA for me, for this webinar, is going to be the Q&A at the end of today's session. So yeah, essentially, these are just a few of the tactics that you can work with. Each platform can have different other tactics that can help as well. For Instagram, there's carousels. The more you swipe through those carousels, the more it counts for engagement. So the more, if you want to generate engagement, use more carousels. They are getting better and better on Instagram, despite me not understanding them one bit. And yes, it's possible to be a social media person and not understand the use of a specific feature on social media. But anyway, that's beside the point. Yeah, so use platform-specific elements to do that as well. Yeah, okay, so practical exercise number 3, and the final one that we have in today's session, I think, is to use the resource that I'm going to ask Andrea to add in the chat as well. Essentially, this is a template that you can copy to run a social media audit, to create a competitor analysis, and a performance review. If you're not using SocialBee, if you're using SocialBee, you can do it a lot easier within SocialBee, but otherwise you can just have something like this template that will help you. Actually, you know what? I'll just copy and paste it here. Oh, no, there we go. Andrea did it. She's faster than me, guys. I promise you, she's the best. Anyway, so one final thing that I wanted to share with you guys, and then we're going into the Q&A session because I do see quite a few. I wanted to leave you with an anti-burnout check-in, because I want you to keep moving towards your goals and not stop because it becomes overwhelming, because you're going into burnout, because you're doing too much, all of that. So ask yourself the 3 questions that you see on the screen. Do I enjoy what I'm creating? If the answer is no, change your strategy. Very important. Do something that you are enjoying. Make it enjoyable. Even if you're not enjoying creating content in general, but you are enjoying talking. I have an example here. My best friend is a vegan chef. She hates doing content online, but loves cooking, loves talking about cooking, right? So the topics that I have her talk about on camera so that she can actually do the posting and the work on social media are the ones that she's more passionate about. Cutting techniques, braising techniques, doing the replacements for the meats. All of that is very fascinating to her. Use the fascination to your advantage. Talk about those topics that you're enjoying. Do that, and you'll see how it becomes a lot easier and more natural to create content, and more sustainable too. Speaking of sustainable, is this sustainable for 30 days? If the answer is no, you're overcommitting. If the answer is yes, you can do it. If the answer is maybe, you're right there on the edge, and I would advise you to take a closer look and be real and honest with yourself, and really, really tell yourself whether you are able to make this sustainable or if you're just thinking about it. And then the third one is, what can you automate? What can you batch create to make things easier for yourself? And this is where AI comes into play. This is where tools like SocialBee come into play. This is where you want to make things feel doable and what will help you build from there. And once you've reached them, once you've done everything that you needed to do and reach your goals, guess what? The work doesn't stop. You just go back to the beginning and the loop starts again. And you start with a new strategy and grow further with new goals, depending on what you want to do next. With that in mind, if you are interested in trying out SocialBee, you can open up a free trial. And if you are already on a trial and you want to take advantage of our cool, awesome challenge here, you can get a 20% discount on the first 3 months on the monthly plan, or a general 24% discount on the yearly plan, using the codes that you see on screen. And then I will also open up SocialBee really, really, really quick. Let's see here. There we go. Really, really, really quick, and show you a few things about SocialBee. So first of all, if you're not familiar, this is SocialBee. It can help you with the 4 core features of any social strategy, the way that I've mentioned, by helping you create content, schedule content, analyze content, and engage with content all in one place. You'll be able to create your content pillars within the categories. You see how I have a lot of categories in here, depending on what I do for each profile. And essentially, there's even a place for content without a category if you feel like you have to do like a Happy New Year post or a Happy Birthday post, and just it doesn't fit anywhere, and you just want to get it over with. You can do that as well. And essentially, you'll have hashtag collections to save for later. You'll have a lot of automation options in here. You even have a social media co-pilot that will help you generate a starting point strategy so that you will be able to get through the motions of getting started faster and then improve from there manually. So this is an AI assistant. It generates content categories, it generates a schedule, it generates content ideas, and you're done. So it's super easy, super quick. Then you have the content creation process with the post editor that also has AI built in so that you can generate captions, images, or customize your captions further. There's a whole bunch of features in there. It would take me hours to go through all of them, so I won't just now. Then you can schedule your content. In here, one cool feature is that you can see your content mix. Let me switch over to Instagram, and you can see what categories you have scheduled and what your content mix looks like. And by the way, one thing I forgot to mention in the beginning when we were talking about content pillars is that your content mix should be comprised of around 80% value, 20% promotional. So if you're looking at this and thinking, I have around 50% content that's promoting my business, I might be over promoting. So yeah, there's a few things in here that you can do. Then analytics. This will help with auditing your content. It will help you look at your content and see what you've been doing before, what worked, what didn't work. You can look at all of that. You can't really do competitor analysis in SocialBee now that I think about it. So that you'll have to do in the spreadsheet that we shared. But just so that you're aware of what your competition is doing so that you can do it better. Uh, but yeah, essentially in the analytics, this is where you're going to look at how your content is performing before you start planning so that you can actually understand where your starting point is and build from there. And this is where you'll return and look at every single month to see how everything performs. And if I switch over to, let's say, Instagram here, you'll be able to see if anything is performing better than last month or worse than last month. I didn't grow anything this year. No, not this month. Anyway, so yeah, you can see exactly what's performing, what's not performing, and you can adjust your strategy from there. That's how you look at analytics. That's how you see analytics. You see them in context of where you are in terms of where you want to be. So your progress versus your goal, but also your overall progress when it comes to comparing it to how you were doing. Because if it is declining, then you need to kind of work it a little bit better. And then you also have a complete post history. You have insights that will give you more info on when your content is getting distributed, all of that. And finally, the engage will tell you all the comments, will show you all the features, all the comments, all the mentions, all the DMs, so that you can just jump in and reply right away, which I will after the webinar. So yeah, that is it for the social media challenge. Again, if you want to do the practical exercises, you can do them and send them over via email. I'll be happy to take a look and provide feedback on them and answer any other questions that you might have. And this is where you would do that. Anka@socialbee.com is where you can reach me. You can always ask any questions that you might have. Okay, let's go ahead and answer some questions because I see quite a few here. Any thoughts on Substack when it comes to posting? Yeah, I don't use it too much, but I see it gaining momentum and it's great for building a community. It's something that is growing quite a bit. So if you find it interesting, I would definitely recommend that you give it a try, see if it works for you or not. For me personally, I'm not really that much of a fan, but yeah, who knows? Maybe later it might catch on to me because I said the same thing about TikTok about 5 years ago, and now I'm on TikTok. Anyway, next question. What happens if you cover more than one time zone? Then you can, I'm assuming you're asking in terms of posting frequency and posting timing. If you have an international audience the way we do, for instance, we tend to post in two main time frames that would be visible across, or I guess around half of the time frames as well. So one that is better for the US maybe, and one that is better for Europe, for Asia, for even for Australia. And we would go posting about those times. But also you can look at insights like when the majority of your audience is online, because even if you're international, there's going to be some overlaps that will be the best times for you to post. And you can see that in SocialBee as well, by the way. Thanks for the optimal posting times. You're welcome. If your audience isn't in a certain geographic region, which time zone you should use? Well, specifically, you should always use the time zone that you are in terms of when you want to post so that you don't have to do math unless you actually like doing that, I guess. I personally don't, so I just use my time zone, but then I adjust it to the moments in my time zone when the majority of my audience is online. So if I'm based in Europe, right? If my entire audience is in the US, that's going to be more towards my evening rather than my early mornings. So I'm going to gear my content a lot more towards evening. Basically, what I'm saying is that you should be looking at your audience, at their behavior, and seeing when they are spending their time online. So essentially, depending on who your target audience is, they can be online at different moments in their lives. If they're commuting, they would be online maybe on their commute, on their lunch break, after work, things like that. If they're a stay-at-home parent, maybe a new mother, they might be online when the child is napping, when even in the early morning times when they get a moment to themselves. So it is definitely different from audience to audience. I have a question here about Reddit, but I don't know what it is about. So if you could add some context, I'm happy to answer. But right now you're just saying Reddit, and I don't know what it's about, so I can't really answer it yet. If you're still here, feel free to type it in the chat, and I'll be able to answer it further. Next question. What social media platform does SocialBee work with so that we can have reviews submitted, or is it Google reviews? So SocialBee is working well with any social media scheduling. No, wait, what? SocialBee is the social media scheduling. Any social media platform. Essentially, it will help you schedule to all 10 major social media platforms right now: Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Google Business, YouTube, X, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all of these. I think I'm forgetting some. LinkedIn, yeah, all of these. But then there's also something called universal posting, which essentially, if you go into your SocialBee account, you'll see that you're able to connect something called universal posting. You'll see that you're able to connect any type of profile platform that doesn't have a direct integration, maybe because they don't have an API, maybe we haven't gotten to it yet, including Reddit, by the way. And you'd be able to semi-automate scheduling content to it through mobile notifications on your phone. So that's also something that you can do there. In terms of reviews specifically, I don't think you can do that with SocialBee because reviews are not considered social in general. So they are more social proof, yes, but they are not social in terms of interactions. Next question that I have here, does SocialBee connect with any blog sites specifically? How can we connect our blog to SocialBee? If you want to share your blog content through SocialBee to your social media channels, you can do it through the content menu RSS feed. You would be able to connect your blog feed there, and it would automatically pull in anything that you're bringing in from your blog to your categories so that you can share it on social media. But if you want to share from SocialBee to your blog, you can't really do that yet. It is somewhat on our roadmap. It is in the asking for feedback pile. But who knows, maybe in the future you'll be able to do that as well. How many posts should you build on a channel before reusing content? For example, Instagram and Facebook. A good rule of thumb is to look at how much content you're sharing. Generally, if you're sharing one post a week, it's going to take longer to reuse than one post a day. So that's one thing that you could keep in mind. And then in terms of posting frequency, I would say around 90 days, the 3-month mark, is safe when you want to reuse something. But even then, it's important to have variations of that content. So assuming I sell water bottles, and I have this in a ton of colors. So let's say I have it in blue, I have it in pink, I have it in red, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to share the same link to have you purchase the water bottle, right? But one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change the image every time I'm sharing that post, so that you don't feel like it's exactly the same. So changing some aspects of it, and you can do that in SocialBee by adding variations or by using the AI with multiple posts to generate, which is also something that you can do. And I talk about this and how you can do it in the demo webinars that I have recorded, and the ones that you can register for in SocialBee. So there's quite a few ways in which you can do that. But as a general rule, when it comes to reusing content, try to make it around 90 days, 60 to 90 days in between, so that it's not repetitive to your audience. You mentioned hashtags don't work as well for discoverability anymore. Yes, that's true. Can you give us a little more details on this change and what you think we should be doing with our hashtags in 2025 and beyond? I think I already answered that, but I'll give you a brief recap of what I said. Essentially, hashtags are no longer used for discoverability purposes. As a matter of fact, Instagram has halted the ability to follow hashtags, which was something that you could have done in the past. So if you were interested in vegan food, you would just follow hashtag vegan food and get all of those posts that were using that hashtag and get a lot of content out of it. But nowadays you cannot do that anymore because people are changing the way they are searching for content, because social media platforms, Instagram and specifically has recently announced this as well, are going very SEO based. So the use of hashtags has shifted from being discoverable to the end audience to being discoverable to the algorithm, to helping the algorithm and the search engine determine that your content is the answer to whatever the audience is searching for, because your audience will not search for hashtags anymore. If you go on TikTok, you're gonna say how to change a tire of my car and not hashtag changing my tire, right? You're going to ask the question as you would on Google, and that is the future. That is how you use hashtags, to indicate the topic, the location if needed, to indicate the answers that your audience is looking for. Is it bad to use the same post to Instagram and Facebook on the same day? For example, making the right graphics in Canva and scheduling on SocialBee to push to both. And then someone added that this is a good question. I always post to both at the same time. And the answer is debatable. It does matter whether you have the same audience, the same behaviors, or not. Instagram and Facebook specifically can be very similar, but if you have different audience segments there, so for instance, Facebook is for the more mature audience, maybe Gen X and higher, and Instagram is more for the younger audience, maybe Gen Z, Gen Alpha. These are going to have different behaviors. You're not going to see Gen Z staying on Facebook. So in this case, if you have different audience segments, then it doesn't hurt to have the same content at the same time if your audience is online at the same times, because they might not be. So pay attention to that as well. Otherwise, you might want to look at individual. When you do the audit in the exercise, you might want to look at, let me show you actually. Let's go to the analytics here. And on Instagram, if you go to page analytics, you might want to see when your audience is online on Instagram. And if you're posting at 4 a.m. when the least of your audience is online, then you should change that, of course. You can also look at the Insights tab, which will give you the distribution of your content. So in this case, you'll see not when your audience is online, but when they're getting your content, which is great, because now if you're posting at 3 p.m. and your audience is seeing it at 7 p.m., then you have a gap in which the algorithm sees no interaction and already determines that you don't have interesting content, and it's not going to show it to your audience. But if your audience is there within the 30-minute window when you're just posting your content, they're more likely to interact with that content and push it further then. So again, the answer to this question is that it does matter on when your audience is and where your audience is. And if it's the same audience, having the same behavior, then yes, it can be detrimental to have the same content because it is viewed as repetitive. But if it's different audiences or different behaviors, then it can get you a pass. Okay, do call to actions show a help in engagement? Well, it depends on the call to action, because if your call to action is something that will help in engagement, then yes. But if you want to visit my website, that's not engagement anymore, especially not on Instagram, where it does take a lot of effort to jump from a post to a website. So it does depend on the call to action. But if your call to action is to ask an open-ended question that will prompt the audience to answer in the caption, in the comments, sorry, or to thumbs up, or to DM you, or solo some things like this, then yes. And I see you added an extra comment there. More like, are people receptive to call to actions? I would say yes, if they are done in a very specific way that is not salesy, that is not I hate using this word, but that is not sleazy, that is not desperate for engagement. So make it authentic, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Can you show how you can leverage LinkedIn Pro built-in analytics? Unfortunately, I cannot show you that because I'm not very familiar with that. In SocialBee, you would be able to get the general analytics. I'm not sure if there's anything else included in the Pro that we might or might not have. I don't know that, so I'm not able to answer. But what I can do is I can do some research. So I can, if you want to email me with this question, I can do some research on it and come up with a better answer than what I can have right now. I've always wondered, how do we pull a list of who really did start following you because of that post? Or the like, share, comment, for example. Is that a way to really know who did all three? No, there's no way to know who did all three. But the real thing is that if you only see that you have one like on your post, but you have one save and one comment, and the like and comment, you can see who they're from, so you would know that it's the same person. You would kind of assume that the save is the same person, but that's not really relevant. It's not relevant for you to know who did all three actions. It's more relevant to know that they did do those actions, even if it's one person or multiple people, or separate people that are doing those actions. It's important for you to get the signal that yes, this content is important either to one person or either to one person or three different people. That's how you interpret this. So it doesn't really matter who is doing it or whether it's the same person doing it. It just counts as more interactions, yes, if one person does all those things, but it's not really relevant as to the metric itself. When the Copilot suggests schedules, times to post in specific, did it calculate it in general, or is it customized based on the industry that you're in? It's not customized based on industry, but it is customized based on your analytics, which is even better, honestly. So it looks at the general best practices in terms of posting frequency, of best times to post generally on the platform. The ones that I shared with you in this slide deck, but it also looks at your analytics. It looks at when your audience is online and the goals that you have, and it kind of does its magic there and comes up with the best posting times. In the insights section of the analytics, why can't I download the distribution graph with the data numbers? You mean this one? I'm assuming it's this one. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna ask the tech team that. Why can't you download that? Huh. Yeah, good question. I'll ask the tech team that. Does it split it for country time zone? I'm assuming you're talking analytics, Michael. If you could clarify that. That would be great. But essentially, if you're talking about analytics, it doesn't, yeah, okay, cool. So it doesn't split it per country or time zone per se. Some platforms do share the localization, the geographical distribution of your audience and demographic distribution. So these are a few things that you do have that you can actually see in SocialBee, but not per time zone. So all the best posting times, all of that is going to be given to you in your selected time zone. Is there someone who can help you with creation, or is that only SocialBee? SocialBee is our agency. So essentially, it's a team of people, human people, human bees, as I like to call them, that will help with creating content on your behalf. So you can do this as a way to outsource your content creation process when you don't want to do it, when you don't like doing it, when you feel like your time is best spent somewhere else and that you want to delegate this. It's a great way to do that, and you can find more information on it in the SocialBee account under SocialBee store. But obviously, it's not the only agency that you can do that with. You can do that, I mean, with VAs, with freelancers, with hiring internal people. There's a bunch of ways in which you can do that. Next question. With the blog, does it get timed or does it just send it when it's published? It does get timed. It depends on the category that you're including it into. So I have my weekly blog post category. The RSS, it feeds into my weekly blog post here. So essentially, whenever I have the category published, that's when the post will go out. If I have it published once a day and I publish blogs once a day, I'll make sure to add it around the time that I want it scheduled, basically. Okay, I already answered this one, and there we go. Did you say our categories in SocialBee should be pillars or topics? It can be both. It can be either. It really depends on what your preference is. My personal preference is to use them as pillars, like engagement, promotional, entertaining, all of that. And that's what you're seeing here mostly, with zero-click content being engaging content, with product spotlight being promotional content, with weekly blog posts being educational content, but specific on the topic of blog posts that we are working on. Case studies are also educational, behind the scenes are entertaining. So you have a mix of, I would say, sub pillars in this case, but you can just use the general pillars. Feel what works best for you. If you work better with topics, then do topics. If you work better with pillars, then do pillars. Just have them in mind when creating your content, and then organize them however works best for you. A better version of my Reddit question. There we go. We have answers now. Is Reddit just a completely separate beast, or is there a way to make it cohesive with the content that you're pushing out via the other channels? It can be a completely separate beast. It is a little bit different than most platforms are. Let's say that. But it does give you the ability to integrate it within your overall strategy. You can do that by adding universal posting in SocialBee, for instance, and that way, whenever you're posting to these other platforms, you can open up a Reddit thread, whatever you call that. Yeah, essentially you can integrate it, but it is also kind of a separate beast because you do have to manually go in and reply to all the questions or answers in the thread and interact differently than you would on other platforms. So I would say it's a mix of the two, basically. And one other thing, how do I get a SocialBee t-shirt? Andrea, can we make that one of the prizes next time? I think we can do that. Yeah, I think we can actually do that. So thanks for the idea. Maybe tune into our next webinars and who knows, you might be able to win one. We don't have them for sale, but you might be able to win one at some point. But yeah, these are the awesome t-shirts that we are currently sporting. Both myself and Andrea as well. One more question came in here, and I'm hoping I didn't miss any questions in the chat, but if I did, just drop them in right now. I noticed a lot of creators doing subscriber only content. Is that something that you can also schedule in SocialBee, Insta, or other examples? Currently, there's no feature that will allow you to directly post content that will be gated for subscriber only. So that will be under a paywall. But you would be able to kind of get away with scheduling it maybe through the universal posting and the mobile app that will help you kind of have a plan for it and just send it to your phone so that you can manually push it where it needs to go whenever the time comes. That would be the workaround right now for that. But who knows, in the future it might be better. Have you got a link to your calendar service? If you're talking about ACE meetings, you can just type in useace.com. There we go. And you'll be able to see our calendar meeting solution. If you answer this, I'm so sorry, but the different platforms limit how far out you can schedule content. Does SocialBee stick with those same limits? The content does not leave SocialBee until it's time to post. So you'll be enjoying the limit that SocialBee has, which is far, far, far away. Essentially, with specific dates, with SocialBee, you can publish for about 1.5 years into the future. Not that I would advise you to just schedule that far ahead and leave it be. And with category scheduling, essentially you have unlimited times ahead. So yeah, no, those don't apply because the content only goes, that only goes out on the day of. So yeah, for your extra comment here, you wanted to add to schedule holiday posts for the year. Yeah, so if those are date specific, right? You want the Christmas post to be on Christmas Day, you want the Happy New Year to be on Happy New Year's Day, and so on. And with those, you would essentially schedule them at a specific time, and SocialBee hosts them inside SocialBee, and it will only share it to the network whenever that time comes. So you don't have to worry about it. Will we be able to schedule from our phone in the future? Yes, in the future, yes, it is on our roadmap. We are working on creating all these awesome features on the mobile app as well. But as you know, mobile development does take some time. So it does take some time to do that. Anyway, I think that, oh wait, one more. Okay, yeah. So one more question. Do you think having Wix and SocialBee or Canva are redundant? I don't know about Wix, but Canva and SocialBee work really well together. I'm not familiar with Wix. I think they're a website building platform. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. But again, no, I don't think they're redundant. SocialBee itself has an integration with Canva so that you can design your content as you would in Canva. And we're also working on improving this, by the way. But you can access Canva directly in SocialBee and then integrate it into your workflow from there and make it a lot easier for you to just, let me pick something randomly here. Yeah, let's do this. There we go. Bam. We're just adding it into SocialBee just like that. And so essentially, no, they're not redundant. Yep, there we go. Okay, so I think this concludes our challenge. One more time, thank you all for joining us and for staying with us for the entirety of these 2 hours. It's been amazing. I hope I managed to give you a lot of information. I hope I managed to answer all of your questions. If I didn't, you can still reach out to me at anka@socialbee.com or the team at hello@socialbee.com, and we'll be able to answer any questions. You'll get the recording to this session sometime in the next 24 hours. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time with more awesome webinars.